Okay, I guess we have everyone in the meeting now, and I'd like to welcome you folks to our Ag Committee meeting. It's Thursday, March 11th, and we're going to be talking in regards to S67 relating to the right to repair agricultural equipment. And so the committee, I'm Bobby Starr, and I chair the committee from Troy, Vermont. I represent Orleans and Essex County. And Chris?
Morning, Chris Pearson, Senator from Chittenden County. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, I'm Anthony Polina. I represent Washington County.
State Senator Brian Collmore from Rutland County.
And Senator Parent he'll be with us in a bit. He's getting his COVID shot this morning. So he'll be a little bit late. He's from Franklin County. So like to welcome all our guests to the meeting this morning. And we kind of run an informal meeting. We have back and forth, and we don't get too excited. If you've got something to say, just raise your hand, and we'll call on you. But we like to keep it kind of simple and loose, and talk about the issue. So, Toby, you're on the list first, but I don't know if you folks have had a chance to talk together and see if you want to lead off or somebody else does, but you're the first on my list. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I don't mind going first. My name is Toby Melandrinos. I'm a young and beginning farmer, started in the grass-fed meat and hay operations in Wethersfield, Vermont. My background, where I came from, was from Virginia, and I did a lot of larger scale agriculture, doing large scale corn and grains down there and silage, running harvesters and cultivators and whatnot. I've run multiple generations of farming equipment through the years and have gotten quite frustrated with the lack of farmer-friendly repairs that can be done these days. As a large-scale operation, I noticed, it didn't really affect them as much as it would affect myself as a smaller scale trying to grow up, of having to call these dealers to come out, and it's costly when you have to have them just plug in a laptop for $600 each visit. The modern equipment comes more with production and efficiency these days. A lot of the older tractors, it takes a lot of money to get them up and moving to the same amount of efficiency, both with fuel costs, safety measures, and all that stuff. But when, I have to look at when I go and update all my equipment, one of the biggest things I have to keep in mind myself is, well, how much is it going to cost me for downtime and sitting out in the field waiting for some guy just to plug it in and get repair codes that I could easily get myself off of my laptop, like I do off my pickup truck or one of my semis or something like that I've fixed in the past. The right to repair bill is important to me because of the hold it puts on the customers who are not mechanically trained, and they have to rely on the equipment company. It kind of puts them at a disadvantage, and it puts us who do know how to repair things at a disadvantage also, because our hands are kind of tied. We're kind of depending on some guy to tell us, oh yeah, it's an air sensor or it's some simple switch. I had an experience when I was farming in Virginia. We actually had to hack a John Deere piece of a tractor and be able to get easy codes. I think it was just two simple sensors that cost $20 a piece to replace, but it would have cost us $700 to have the guy come out and tell us it was two sensors. And that there's a lot of information out there. There's a couple Vice Land interviews that they did with farmers a couple years back when all this stuff was starting up, where they were having to find ways to go around manufacturers just to be able to keep their machines running. And that's not really right. You want to create a good relationship with the person who's spending $200,000+ on a piece of equipment. It's kind of hard when we have to rely on him coming out with a laptop all the time. And downtime is what costs you the most money. And if it's just sitting out in the field,
Yes.
can't really afford that.
No, that those aren't very good stories you're telling us. That's for sure. Chris?
Thanks, Toby. I'm struck that I don't even know what a craw is, but this issue really sticks in my craw. It's so irritating. Are you saying that in your case, because you know how to fix things, that you need somebody with an authorized person to come out with a laptop? They tell you it's sensor X, sensor Y, and then you can replace the sensor. You just need that initial plug-in before you can even know where to begin. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So, I mean, the simple answer is yes. If they would release, so like with, for instance, diesel pickup trucks, you can go out and buy $1,000 monitor, plug it into your truck. It gives you all of the diagnostic codes. You can see what it needs to happen. If it's something simple, I can take care of it. If it's something large, it goes to the shop. So it'd be within the same realm with all these farm tractors. Right. Of, if it's a simple sensor, I mean, one of the examples, it was a combine that I ran. It was literally the guy plugged it in. It was a stupid sensor that all he had to do was hit, I think, like F2, and it cleared itself. Well, yep, you're back and going. Well, I mean, I could have done that.
Right. For the price of one visit, you could get the equipment, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all know Peter Sterling used to work for the Senate, and he always impressed me because he could run the diagnostics on his Toyota. It's the same thing. For a long time, he couldn't buy those, and people started working through the legal system, and now he has one that could tell you what's wrong with your car. But all right, that's helpful. So it's not just, because sometimes it also comes up that it's it's parts, but for by and large, it's the diagnostics that's hanging you up, it sounds like.
Yeah, and that's the biggest issue for me is diagnostic, just to keep the machine running so that I understand exactly what's going on day to day. If anything starts failing, I should be able to see it before it fails and cost me $2,500 when it's $20 for a repair that I can do out in the field really quickly.
And do you own this equipment outright, or are you leasing it, or how's that work?
So right now I own 2 pieces of older equipment just because I really don't have the funds to feel comfortable owning such a large piece of equipment that I have to rely on somebody else. I've been burned a bunch of times with different manufacturers of tractors, not at my own farm, but farms I help at, where it's okay, well, let's sit around and wait, whether it be farming and construction. I ran into the same issues, but it's just the whole downtime where you sit there and have to sit there and worry and think and wait, and no one's really got time for that.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I think you and I, Toby, are on the same page. I run big trucks. My son, grandson, and the rest all have new stuff that if you don't get to a computer, you haven't got any idea. I run one that's a little bit older before that age, and I get along just as good as they do. You're better usually, because they have to go to Burlington all the time to plug their rig in.
Yeah.
Chris, I think, had a question.
Yes,
Chris, you have your hand up,
yes, sir. I could,
Chris Gibson?
yes, sir.
Yeah,
I represent Harvest Equipment. I've been in the John Deere business for a little over 20 years, so I've seen a lot of this technology come into place. I hate to rebut what Toby's saying, but that is not the case. You can buy a customer service advisor tool from John Deere that you can plug in and do everything that he is asking them to do.
did you have something else you wanted to say though, in regards to being, testifying in regards to reliable and all the charges? Like what if an owner calls you folks for service, is there must be a service fee, and then if you have to plug in, is there a plug-in fee? And could you explain a little bit of that to us?
If a customer calls us for service, many of these machines have onboard diagnostics that will throw trouble codes. At that point, we can look up and see if it's a trouble code that he can easily fix in the field. We do that readily with no charge. I would say we do that 40 or 50 times a week. But if we do have to go to the field, there is a service call fee to go in and out and plug into the machine. Like I said, customer service advisor would allow, which is already available, will allow the customer to do these things, but they're going to need that level of expertise with the diagnostics to do that. We spend thousands of dollars a year training technicians so that they can go out and do that efficiently in the field.
Yeah, but if you get 40 or 50 calls a week from people, it can't be that machinery is very reliable, or there's something wrong with something.
Well,
I mean,
go ahead, sir.
well, I mean, that's quite a few calls. I mean,
Well,
it's eight a day or so. Of course, I know you folks have quite a few dealerships, but
Right.
that's still quite a few calls, I would think.
What we find is a lot of this at times is customer induced. If they haven't, like in wintertime for their DEF system, which obviously is a federally mandated system that we must put on the tractors according to the EPA. If they don't start that, if they just start their tractor and move it and don't allow that to come up to temperature, it will throw a code. It's trying to save itself instead of have a repair. That you need to run the tractor long enough so it warms up the DEF fluid so that it could use its proper function to run the machine. So many of our calls are operator induced, and it's usually a quick 2-minute call. They're back up and running. A lot of it's questions that they could answer if they actually had the customer service advisor or actually looked in their operator's manual. But we try to be convenient for the customer, and a lot of times it's like we're the easy button. You've seen that easy button at Staples. They call us, they get a quick answer, they're back up. A lot of the times it doesn't even affect the off function of the machine. It will just throw a diagnostic trouble code.
Yeah. Did somebody have their, Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Chris, can you give us a sense of, you mentioned that the customer can buy a diagnostic tool from you. So is that normally done right at the time of purchase or somewhere down the line? And can you give us a sense of what that might cost somebody?
The service advisor tool is about $2,500. There's a monthly subscription that they have to pay just like we do as a dealership. It costs us several $1,000s a year to have access to this information. And plus we also send text to school so they understand how the thing works and makes it efficient for them. So that's available that time of purchase or anytime down the road, right through any John Deere dealer. It doesn't necessarily have to be us. Okay.
So, and this may put you on the spot a little bit and ask you for opinion you don't want to offer, but it seems to me, the phrase planned obsolescence, where a manufacturer is making something with full knowledge that it's going to be changed on a periodic basis, further realizing profits because then the old stuff doesn't work anymore. It just seems to me, and I don't know how often that happens. I mean, back in the old days when the motors ran on points and plugs, it was a pretty simple matter to change the spark plugs and do that kind of stuff. It seems like, and I don't know, and that's why I'm asking you the question. It seems like the manufacturers deliberately kind of planning on people having to always depend on them at the further that you go. And I know that might put you in a tough spot to answer it.
No, I think I can speak to that some here. I believe that a lot of this technology is customer driven. It's what the customer is asking for. They want to know, in order for these machines to work properly, they need to know that what their rates in the field or what the phosphorus is in the ground as they're planting. A lot of these other things are federally mandated through the U.S. Clean Air Act. It's nothing that we could still build John Deere 4020 tractors from 1969. We're really good at that, but that's not what the market's driving. It's all technology based, and we can actually, these tractors can plant in a field within 1 inch from one end to the other accurately, and that's what the market is driving for land use, and again monitoring what the water runoff is and not overseeding a spot. So we know what their harvest yields are year to year, and that affects the nutrition of the animal, and they carry that all the way through their farm. These big farms now are all very, very technology savvy, and they know what's going into their animals before they even put it in the feed bundle.
So in Chris's case, if he had that tool for $2,500 plus whatever that monthly charge is, and he knew what he needed, he could just come to you and buy the 2 sensors, which were, I think you said $25, and put them in himself.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Speaking of technology, of course, we've had problems with water quality and runoff with phosphorus and stuff, and so we've been monitoring that for the last, I don't know, half dozen years or so, and trying to get that to be better. We had some fertilizer people in a few weeks ago, and they were telling us that even like spreading fertilizer in a spread truck, big truck, they have this computerized system in the spreader truck that's running from a satellite. And if your soil tests show that you need, 100 pounds to the acre or whatever, and then you get to the next acre as it's going down the field, it'll automatically change the amount of fertilizer that's coming out of that spreader rig so that you aren't over fertilizing. I mean, it's crazy. And the same thing with manure spreaders. They've got them rigged up, running off satellites. But anyways, any other questions right now for Chris? If not, we'll move on to Robert. And you want to introduce your wife or the lady that's with you?
Joan can do a good job of introducing herself. Yes.
I'm Joan Falco, FALCAO, and we are, I guess, still new farmers in our 7th year. We have 180 acres that we use for rotational grazing. We're on the shores of Lake Champlain in a beautiful conserved farm. We do grass-fed beef. We do management intensive rotational grazing. So we just have grass all over the place. We have a tractor at about 125 horsepower, which puts us over the 75 horsepower limit, and we have to have DEF fluid. And that isn't a headache.
Yeah, we got this tractor we inherited it, and the DEF fluid is one of the issues. We're really locked in, as Toby mentioned, to needing the dealer to come out. Now it's not a John Deere, or else
there's more options with the John Deere, because
it seems like there's more options with the John Deere.
A lot more of them around.
But we only have one dealer we can go to. They have a monopolistic lock on northern Vermont, northwestern Vermont. And we've been saddled with some very high charges, some of which we don't agree with, but now we're on their bad list. So now when we call them, they often don't respond. And
They lost your phone number.
we think we're just going to get rid of this tractor and we're going to buy something that's maybe dear, but something that we don't need to have a serviceman come out with a laptop to service it. Maybe it'll be a Mahindra or something else from overseas. We don't want to do that, but what else can we do?
They use the laptop not only to diagnose the code, but often to like reprogram it. We've had to have ours reprogrammed, sometimes not successfully, after replacing a sensor or working on the transmission. So that's an additional charge.
I don't want to set up a sales deal here or anything, but you need to talk to Chris about trading tractors. No, I'm just kidding. But it sounds like you've had some really bad experiences with the vehicle that you own then.
We do. But in all honesty, there are times, as Chris mentioned, when we've there was one time when I was getting ready to hay for the day at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the PTO didn't go on. So holy crap! Call the dealer in an hour when he's open, and fortunately, I got an administrative assistant who was very kind and gave me, diagnosed some of the error codes, and that the switch was part of it. So I said, well, I unhooked the switch and the connections and hooked it up again, and then it worked. Well, later on, I had to replace the switch, but at least I didn't lose that opportunity. When you're haying, you got to do it when the weather's right. And we just had that window there, boom, and we needed to do it. So, and we couldn't call anybody else. We do bring in some other mechanics, independent mechanics, to do things that don't require the computer, because otherwise the cost is twice what these independent mechanics will charge. But they're limited when you got to use that computer. They can't do it.
I wanted to say something. I wanted to say something about DEF fluid. Okay.
Yep.
Time for DEF fluid?
Yeah, you can talk about the weather if you want.
It's getting better. Mud season is here, yes. Okay, we use our tractor for haying and carrying large round bales of hay for feeding the cattle. So we don't need anything super, super fancy. But anyway, we've had times when the tractor down regulates. Raise of hands. Who knows what down regulates means?
I do. It'll only idle.
Yes. Well, we get symbols like this on showing they are not codes. We try to describe the symbols. We take photos. We send them in. If the DEF fluid is not high enough, or it's not the proper purity, or there's a problem with the injection of the DEF fluid, the machine will give you a certain amount of time, and then it starts reducing the torque by 65% and the engine speed by 40%. And it could be just the sensor. And here we are trying to make hay when the sun shines. And really, we have very small windows for our first cut. It's like a day and a half, 2 days. We do baleage, so it's hay in a day. But still, we can't afford to lose even half a day. And then there's not always availability. So we often kind of feel like we're on our own. And we've had other farmers help us because we're small, they're small, and they can come help us. We've paid people to come do custom whatever when our tractor didn't start. And then people loan us equipment. So it's, we've been fortunate that way. But anyway, okay. Chris has a question.
Yeah, Chris
Got two Chris's.
Chris.
So,
Pearson.
I actually do have a question for the other Chris, Mr. Gibson and Robert, and was it June?
Joan, Joan.
Excuse me.
Everybody thinks it's June.
No, I'm trying to listen to too many things all at the same time. Joan and Robert, remind me of you sort of saying, well, this is mostly available today for John Deere anyway, right?
Correct.
So then what's the problem if we have legislation that just ensures this is available?
Well, the concern is we have no problem with the right to repair. It's the right to modify. And if you get into that certain level of service advisor above the customer level, then you can modify code. At that point, you can then derate emissions, which are federally mandated. You all know, such as their DEF fluid. John Deere, any manufacturer didn't come up with this. This was something that the federal government mandated we do.
But you don't have a liability issue if I buy my tractor outright, and then I mean, you see that on the road all the time. People put different mufflers on and noisemakers and whatever. That's not on you, is it?
Pollution's a lot different.
Well,
You take a truck and modify that depth
Yeah.
fluid and.
But come on, I mean, farmers are not really motivated to be polluting more. But my question is that on the dealer? Let's say I do that on my tractor. Is that on you? Do you have some kind of liability there?
We would only have liability if it came into our shop modified and they asked us to send a tractor back out that had been modified from original form. That's
Sure.
the difference being in your car and your truck. In a tractor, we have an inspection process in the state of Vermont. Every vehicle gets inspected every year. Who from the state of Vermont is going to go inspect these tractors and make sure that this hasn't been modified?
What about, so you mentioned the diagnostics are available, and you said you could buy that equipment and then there's a subscription. Is that do I have that right?
Correct, just like there is for any form of that type of thing. Yes, sir.
But then we heard testimony the other day that once a part is installed, that sometimes a computer is required to link it to the main motherboard. I don't even know what I'm talking about, but to basically tell the computer in the tractor, this new part is here and it's what we want. Is that also available, or is that something that requires you to come out after the part's been replaced?
On many of the parts, you can just install them. If you have the service advisor, customer version of service advisor, you'll be able to calibrate your machine and continue to go. That's all currently available.
But
So the only thing we can't do is the embedded code in the tractor, which affects emissions and safety systems. I could, if you have just a second, I could tell you a little story about what we call in the business is known as a shade tree mechanic, somebody that's not with an OEM dealer, had worked on a tractor and couldn't figure it out, was then sent to our Newport location. Well, this was an older tractor that didn't even have the computer systems that we have today. He had, without knowing to anyone, he had bypassed the safety switches. Our service manager went out, turned the key on this tractor, checked the hours on it, the machine started and ran over him. This young man has now got 2 broken legs and severe disability for the rest of his life. That all happened from the point of somebody not understanding how this works, working on the machine and then sending it out unsafe. There's a lot more safety systems on a tractor than there is always obviously on a car.
Yeah. Toby, did you understand that? Did you realize that you could buy this if you ran John Deere equipment? You could buy the diagnostic testing equipment, or is that something?
No, I've known that for a couple of years, and I've been intertwined with many different brands of equipment. I've done diesel truck work, truck pulling, tractor pulling, and all that. So I understand how to write codes, change codes, tweak things and stuff like that. But for, it's easier for me to do a lot of that kind of computer work just of my generation and coming up with a bunch of computers and figuring out how to do coding and all that on my own. But for other farmers who don't understand how to get that diagnostic equipment and read it and understand it and look up the correct codes, I mean, there's that puts them at a disadvantage. Like when they're in the middle of haying and that thing goes down, they might not understand fully how to plug it in, where to read the right code, get the right information. And I mean, I've had issues with John Deere. I used to be all about John Deere. I'm about done with them. But Kubota, I know for a fact that there's been times where, like they said, you put in a part and then you got to wait for somebody to come okay the part because the tractor still doesn't understand it. I've run into that issue with grooming at Okemo with the snow groomers. There's always a flaw in the system. It sounds all great and gravy from the dealership a lot of times, and they do have a good point. They're doing what's right by them. I can't fault them for nothing. And without those guys, you know, a lot of the easier stuff isn't available to us. And my issue is never been with the actual dealers like Chris. My issue is with the actual producer of the equipment, and it comes from somewhere a lot larger than just our local dealer. This is something that the actual companies need to recognize if they want to continue the relationship with us and our dealers to work fluidly together, that the larger companies need to, you know, start breaking things down a little bit more simple, because not everybody knows how to run computers and can create a code or, you know, go through there and reflash something really quickly to get the tractor out of a really bad situation.
Yeah, Chris, how is the manufacturer, John Deere's a manufacturer? Do they use you dealer guys good, or is it kind of hard sometimes to get updates and things from them?
Well, we have a very good relationship. We consider them a business partner, of course, in what we're trying to do. We have a dealer technical assistance center that we can go to if our techs are in the field and can't figure that out. And then if they're in the field, it brings them to the top of the priority list so that they get feedback in a timely manner. But I would like to speak to what Toby was saying about there's a lot of chipping and whatnot that goes under these tractors that nobody sees. Again, that's modifying for original OEM spec. And not only is that modifying what the tractor or the machine was originally due, it affects the used market, because now that tractor it goes to somebody else. They don't know that it's been chipped and changed. So that's all consideration. And from what Toby was saying, I mean, this equipment is available. If the people aren't capable of using it, what is the law going to do for them that tells them they're going to be able to use the machine to plug in and diagnose their own codes if they were to have it?
Yeah, Chris Pearson?
I guess I'd jump in. You know, to me, it's really straightforward when we think about the automobile universe, because this similar dynamic exists there. There are plenty of people that choose to take their car to the dealer to be repaired. That's their choice. There's also plenty of people that like to fix their own car, and there's plenty of people that like to use the neighborhood garage for whatever reason. And it's very hard for me to see why we wouldn't extend and the same parallel basically for anything, but in this case for farm equipment, where we have, you know, in a rural state, whereas we've heard, you know, losing a day on a key weather event could be really critical, and you're in the middle of nowhere, and so you've got, you know, it's tricky, and a lot of farmers are hanging on at the same day, so the equipment, you know, it's sort of a perfect storm. But I don't see, you know, I don't fault you, Mr. Gibson, for trying to hold on to your business, as you should, you know, and nobody here is trying to say you're not doing a good job and you're not a straight actor. And I'm quite confident the dealers, if we had this kind of law, would remain profitable, just as the, you know, Chevy dealer down the road from my house remains profitable, even though the neighborhood garage can fix my Chevy. So what I struggle with is just the straightforward principle. Robert and Joan own a piece of equipment. Why should the person, the company that manufactured it, why should they have any authority over how they want to get it repaired. Toby owns equipment. It's his equipment. He ought to have basic rights to deal with it. If he has the cash to buy the tools, if he has the knowledge, that should be on him. Or if he wants to take it, if his neighbor is knowledgeable, why shouldn't the neighbor have the ability to buy what is necessary to fix that equipment in an hour instead of waiting a day until some authorized person comes? It just bothers me. And there's there's a lot of horror stories, and they exist everywhere because a lot of this equipment is very serious equipment, but nothing is more prevalent and more dangerous than our automobiles.
That's not the case, but I'll speak to that after.
Well, I mean, to the scale, we have millions of cars. We have as many cars as we have people in Vermont. And so just the prevalence, clearly more people are injured in an automobile than in any other kind of equipment. But
that's just the scale. Yes.
Yes. And we're peaceful about the neighborhood garage. And if the neighborhood garage is not competent, the market will take care of that. And that garage will be shut down because people will stop going there because people are not stupid. And I think the same principle applies here. If Toby has the wherewithal, he ought to be able to fix it. And if his neighbor farmer does not, then he has the right to call you. And I can't for the life of me see what the justification is for something I own to be fixed in the way that I feel is appropriate. And I take that risk. That's to me what we're talking about. And the same law is applied in automobiles. I keep coming back to this because we've been through this exact same trajectory in the last several decades where the industry was trying to hold on to the profit of how and where and when you could fix things. And the consumer pushed back, and ultimately now you can buy diagnostics for your car. You can get parts very easily. So I don't know. To me, there's a real principle here, and we ought to continue to look at this because it is costing farmers time and money and hassle, and not for what seems to me to be a full suite of valid reasons.
Well, the diagnostic tools you're all talking about are all readily available. All that stuff is available. It's just the embedded code and the changing of that is the only thing that we're resisting here. That's like propriety is part of commerce. I mean, it's all part of. And again, this wasn't something we drove. The customer has demanded that these machines have this level of technology between the customer and the EPA for the emission side, which is a majority of what I see here. The complaints out is on the emission side of the room here. All those things. There's more wire in one of these new tractors than there was in the first space shuttle. These things are way more complicated than the regular automobile. And if they have the expertise to plug in and repair, that's fine. We just don't want the embedded code changed to affect emissions or safety systems, and that's our concern.
Joan, I think you had your hand up, and then I'll call in Robert.
Okay, I just had
And then
collected
Robert.
some. I had collected some
I
data and
frozen.
wanted you to know that for us just to have somebody come to our farm, it's $225 just to show up because you have to pay for their transportation. Okay, and then it's $125 an hour. If we have our tractor towed, it's $400. And we contrast that to the independent people around here who fix other things that don't need the laptop. We've had one that charges $65 an hour. And of course, add that transportation additional. And then we had another one that charged $75 an hour. Now, if they have to pay for those expensive laptops and code, they would probably charge more. But at least we'd have choices, and maybe there would be more individuals who chose to make this their line of work. We're not like Toby, who perhaps could use it himself, but we sure can't afford to buy that monitor and pay the monthly subscriptions. But perhaps an independent can, and they would have lots of business during haying time and cropping time, and it would just open up opportunities for small independents. Now, maybe they can get that from John Deere, but I don't know if they can get them from our dealership. No one has, let's put it that way.
I can't speak to other manufacturers. It is available from John Deere, and look, there's people that are doing it. It's if that person can go out and do it at the level of expertise that some of my guys are, then that's be great win-win for you, I guess. But I don't. We spend thousands of dollars a year to keep our techs up to date and trained so that we can do things in an efficient manner and work through all those things to keep people going. We have techs on call 24 hours a day during haying season, and they're out and about, and we get to people as quickly as possible because we realize we're part of the farming community too. We're not just a big. I grew up in Vermont. My relatives moved here about the same time the Chittendens did, settled up in Starksboro and Addison County. I'm a born and bred Vermonter as well, so we understand all those facts of how farming works, and we have to be there for these people when things are down, and there's a limited window to get your crop in and make sure that it's in and so that your animals get proper nutrition.
Robert, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm delighted to hear that John Deere does provide these service stuff, but I want to, I guess, say that I don't know which farmers you're talking about, Mr. Gibson, because every farmer that I know, and I know a number of them now, they're smaller farmers in the most part, they look specifically for machines and tractors that are older, that don't have these computers on them, for just that reason, that they're easier to maintain. And I think you have to agree that the market for those tractors is pretty darn good.
I would say that they probably do, because that's their level of expertise to repair those things.
Right.
Again, we don't build, this is all, a lot of this stuff is federally mandated. All your DEF fluid, all that wasn't us. You need to talk to Bernie and Patrick about that. They forced this stuff down our throat. That's still nothing that we tried to create here. We just try to comply with the federal law and make sure that people are up and running as best we can. And again,
Now,
some guys
Chris,
are very painful. Yes, sir.
We don't want you picking on Bernie and Patrick now. They're going to send us a check here in the next couple of weeks. You know, we don't want to pick on them too bad. No, I was just going to say, I got a few acres up here, so in Troy, and I have a 656 International. It's about the same idea as a 2040, maybe John Deere, or, and 55, 60 horsepower. That thing runs every time I go out there. It starts, keep the oil in the air, filters and things changed, and it's just a bulletproof tractor. Let's see, Toby, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I guess for my one of my questions, and it's mainly towards the manufacturer side, and I don't have an issue with the DEF stuff. I know it's a pain in the butt, but there's reasons and rhymes to everything, so I tolerate it, and there's a reason for it being in the machines, and it's all good because we are working towards fuel efficiency, because diesel fuel is not going to be around forever. But so for the whole programming side of it with the laptops and all that jazz, if you have a smartphone, Apple sends out software updates and it just downloads to your phone for free. Now, I know with a lot of my truck stuff and the tuners and stuff that I've used in those, when software updates come available, those are just given right to whoever owns the programmer. I don't have to pay a monthly subscription to Smarty Tech or nothing. They just send me the code. I load it up on my laptop, plug it into my truck, and I'm out. So with these larger tractors that are coming out, and we'll just say John Deere, for instance, with those service codes, and I if I was able to come up with the money to buy the computer and all that, whatever comes with it, do I have to sit there and monthly update the actual service computer and then download different codes and then come up with different things just on my computer so it stays up to date with the tractor? Because all that stuff changes. There's all different kinds of software, hardware that changes, malware, all that stuff for security reasons. So is that something that is available if I'm paying a monthly subscription and I've just paid all this money for diagnostic malware? Does that come in with it for a freely update whenever you guys get a software update? Is that available to the customer just for free, or does that have to be a charged platform?
As long as it's not an emissions or safety related, it will go direct to them, yes. Otherwise, it will go directly to us. If it's emissions or safety related, many of that falls under the Clean Air Act again, and we go out and do that for free. Some of that we can do with our RDA system, that's our remote diagnostic link, that will link right to the tractor, and just like your iPhone, it'll update itself upon you starting the machine, and it'll tell you that, and you'll be up and running.
Yeah, but John Deere will have you go out for free, Chris, to update some of the emissions issues.
If it's a payload issue that it is the fault of a company, you certainly will. If it's an emissions related issue, or especially if it's a safety related issue, because John Deere is very, very conscious on the safety end of their units. So.
Yeah, that's good news. Yeah. Joan? You're muted, Joan.
That's Bob. Is there a scenario for renting out the laptop?
We do not do that because we obviously don't have extra ones just to lay around and do that, and so we currently do not rent those things now.
What would it take to do that? I mean, would that make sense, or you wouldn't trust the customer would use it correctly, or?
Well, we wouldn't rent. We're not in the rental business. We know enough to know we try to sell and do that. We don't rent anything. We're not in the rental business, so I wouldn't really speak to that part of it. Our stuff we have here, we have enough stuff to keep our techs going, and so we don't have extra of that material laid around, because again, the cost and the monthly fee to keep it up and running. And if we rented it, how would you have the expertise to run it? I guess if somebody had the expertise to run it, that would be fine, but we're not in the rental business.
Yeah, and what about if somebody, well, you don't rent tractors, but so I was going to ask you, if you rented or leased a vehicle, does the service go with that vehicle from the dealership if you leased a tractor or a big combine?
When we lease that equipment, we also include a PowerGuard extended warranty, which does include taking care of all that stuff for the customer. Yes, so that is certainly available at the time of purchase. And actually, John Deere actually reduces the residual on the back side of their lease if they buy the PowerGuard to extend their warranty, so that everybody knows this machine's kept up to date throughout its lifetime.
Yeah. Good morning, Corey. Good that you
Morning.
got
Sorry I'm late. Had to get my brain tickled.
Yeah. Do you pass or not?
I don't know. I'll know tomorrow.
Yeah.
I was never very good at tests, Bobby.
Well, you didn't do very good to hear this morning. We marked you tardy.
All right.
So there, you know, I wanted to ask John or Robert, you don't have to answer this. I'd like to know what kind of a tractor you have, so I won't buy one.
We'll decline to answer that.
We'll send it to you via email. How's that? By the way, I did want to ask, we haven't been introduced to Mr. Carrigan or Miss?
Parent.
Oh.
It's
Gail.
just as well.
Gail.
You haven't missed a thing.
I'm the committee assistant sitting in for the regular committee assistant this morning, who is Linda Lehman. She manages both the House and Senate, so sometimes she needs a little assistance.
I thought maybe you'd like to meet Parent. He might be your senator.
Hi, I'm Corey Parent. I'm from St. Albans, but I represent Franklin County and Alberg.
Okay.
Sorry, I was late today. I've been in quarantine for the last week. I had to get my second COVID test. I was exposed last week, so hopefully I get to come out when the results come back.
Oh, good. Right, you're doing well.
Well, I wasn't positive first time, so I haven't had any symptoms.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, lots to consider here, I guess. And I don't think anybody on this committee wants a local business to suffer as a result of us passing any sort of legislation. So again, Chris, I might put you, not Pearson, but Gibson, in a tough position. But if this were to pass the way it's written right now, can you estimate how much of a hit your particular dealership would get, or just maybe an average of any dealership that's a franchise that's selling this? In a sense, it's proprietary information that the manufacturer owns. But again, I think we need to be careful not to do, because I don't think anybody on the committee is interested in harming our local business people either.
I don't know how I'd really calculate that right off the top of my head. I wish I had a better answer than that, but I'm just going to honestly tell you, I don't know how to go about calculating what the impact would be.
Okay.
A lot of this stuff is already available, like we said. Nobody's using it. So, I mean, why would we need a law to change stuff that is already happening? Again, we're against this because of the embedded code for safety and emissions reasons. That's really the long and the short of it. I don't know if you people have seen these young fellows around. They call it rolling coal. There's black smoke pouring out the back of their truck. Doesn't look very healthy or good for us in the environment. To tell me that that's not going to happen on a scale with farm equipment, I think we don't know the farming community as well as we might think.
So your concern is more of a safety and emissions issue than it is economic.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Chris,
Yeah,
Senator Pearson?
Mr. Gibson's been helpful, a lot of information. Roughly in your business, could you give us a crude estimate of where sales is versus repair in terms of your revenue for the business?
I would say we're on a 40-60% sales to parts and service aftermarket. We call that. The sales business, as you know, you can buy your stuff anywhere today, and that's part of the way the world works now. So margins are what they used to be. And even though the price keeps going up on the service side, to pay a technician and find quality technicians, we all know that the labor force in Vermont is very, very, very tight when it comes to skilled people. We're actually promoting a program through our dealership where we'll pay for the young person's college as long as they sign up with us for 3 years afterwards. We're actually going to pay for them to go to school because we can't hire these people. We're trying to develop them. So it's a very, very tight market with the skills that we need out there to keep things going.
Yeah. Thanks. And we may never be able to predict if Chris's business takes a hit, what other businesses spring to life. That is a difficult challenge of our job, but appreciate the feedback.
Yep. Any other, Joan, did you have your hand up? Yes.
This is for Chris Gibson.
Yes,
Are all your laptops busy on Saturday and Sunday?
Depending on who's on call, I would say maybe not all of them, but if we have technicians on call 7 days a week to serve people. So
not all of them are busy then. I mean,
not all of them every second.
there are some days when they are not used by the business.
There's some days when they're not used by the business, but if one happens to break, we also need backup for the ones that are in the field as well. So,
How many do you own?
Oh,
Am I allowed to ask? Is this proprietary?
Off the top, all our technicians each have one. I'd have to take an exact technician head count to do that, but I mean.
5, 10, 20?
Oh, let's say more than 20.
Yeah. Oh, wow, you've got five dealerships or?
Yes, sir. We have 4 here in northern Vermont and 1 in northern Maine.
Yeah, because we got one right here in Newport or Derby, and no, a very good dealership.
So we try to do the best we can to serve the community, and
Yeah,
it's all part. Again, this is all part of the farming community. Is all part of what we do too. All of what we do revolves around that. So.
yeah. Chris.
Well, just I believe in the automotive universe, the diagnostics cable, is $80 or something. That's what folks have told me. So, did you say it was more like $2,500 for the purchase, and then there's a monthly subscription? Is that what you said, Mr. Gibson?
Yeah, we're in that ballpark. Yes, sir.
So, and you've asserted that there's not really a problem because people could do this, but the Farm Bureau nationally has endorsed right to repair. We do hear from farmers that this is an ongoing concern. So there is a mismatch, right, between stories. I've heard from farmers who are very encouraged that we're looking at this and are unwilling to come forward to talk about it because they're a little worried about irritating the dealer that they have to work through. That this is the relationship that's tricky. But I guess I was just curious. You sort of asserted this is not a problem. So why then would you think the U.S. Farm Bureau has supported the right to repair? And by the way, not from leadership necessarily, but members have brought it forward because there is an underlying frustration around these issues.
Well, I can't speak to all manufacturers. I can only speak to what we do. But I'm not a politician. I'm not any of those things. I just try to speak from experience here. But all that stuff is available to them. So why aren't they currently using it? Do they not know what to do? Have they not done their research? As you said, you thought that a cable costs $80. You don't know what it costs. So have they done their research? Who's
well, that's from
who's lobbying or pushing this issue?
My friend who owns the cable told me it cost him $75 to diagnose his car, any of his cars. But that's a good example.
We'd be happy to host any of you folks anytime, so you can see our diagnostic tools and how they work and whatnot. We'd be happy to show you that anytime. That would bring people to a better understanding.
Yeah, it would be interesting to, have one of the tech go where we could reach out with the tech and have them show us how, if there is a problem, how it works and how complicated stuff might be. But anyways, we've got another crew coming behind you folks. Are there any last minute questions or concerns? We're going to be working on this issue as we move forward. And so if any of you want to, of course, come back the next time we have a hearing on this, you're certainly more than welcome. If you have new information you'd like to present, we'd be glad to listen. But anyways, if there are no last minute questions or concerns, I'd like to, thank you folks for your time this morning. Certainly appreciate it. And I think the discussion was good and certainly helped us to form an opinion in regards to the bill. Committee members, any last minute questions from you folks? Chris, you had a question or concern or statement?
I just pulled up what for our dealerships, less than 2% of our repairs require reprogramming of the unit. So less than 2% of the repairs we do in 5 locations require the reprogramming of a machine.
I'll be darned. Yeah, that's pretty good. Joan?
How many repairs require the computer for diagnostics?
We use it as a tool to speed up the process. I mean, there's ways to diagnose many of these things with a Fluke multimeter or with so you can do an ohms test, because that's a lot of how these sensors work. We use them on probably 55-60% of the repairs to speed up the process, because if we take the code that's out of the machine, we can dump it into our computer. It may point us to a direction in the tech manual to speed up that repair and save cost and time for the customer.
Yeah, I think that would be the most useful, actually, would be to be able to access the list of codes and what the problems might be from that.
Most of our John Deere tractors, anything built late model here, has all onboard diagnostics on the dash. You can pull it right up in the monitor and read the codes right there.
Right, but once you read the codes, then finding out what that code means.
Well, you can call the dealership, right?
You can call
Right.
a dealership, or if you could buy the customer service advisor and have that information right there. A lot of the simple codes are in your operator's manual, as well as tech manuals are available.
That's Bob.
Yeah. Well, we've got the other crew coming in about 5 or 10 minutes. So, well, we're going to move from tractors to maple syrup next. So it's going to be a lot sweeter deal than what we've been talking about. But anyways, thanks a lot, folks, for your time this morning. Really appreciate that. And I don't know if you found out about this on our webpage or how, but we do have a webpage, and we try to get our meetings up, most of a week ahead. So if you see this coming back up or anything else actually, and you want to participate, there's a phone number. You call Linda or today Gail, but they'll give you the info and have you sign up. So with that, thanks a lot, and we'll see you hopefully again.
Thank you for letting me participate today.
Yeah, well, appreciate it, Chris. Yeah. So committee, we have a group, Dr. Haas and Steve Collier, that crew coming in next at 10:15 to give us an overview on maple syrup, the testing that goes on, and why our tests are different than the federal tests or the standards, I guess, rather than the test, the standards. So if you want to take a minute and grab a coffee good morning, Dr. Haas and Stephen and Mark. Is Tucker going to be with us as well, or do you know?
Yes, he is coming, Senator.
Yes.
Good morning.
Yeah. Good to see you. I think you folks know everybody. So we can get started. The issue that we wanted to, I guess, chat about and learn a little more about was the issue from last week, and kind of kept getting into it over the weekend to some degree. Was in regards to the difference between maple testing requirements in Vermont and versus federal regs on testing. And I think that we would be interested in knowing a little bit about that history of change when we did it or when it happened, and what the difference. I know it's very small, but in layman's terms, what that difference really is. So I don't know who wants to lead off on that. Kristen, or I mean, you're the boss, so we'll pick on you, I guess. But no, do it any way you'd like, Kristen. If Steve knows about it or however you want to do it.
Thank you, Senator Starr, and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your committee regarding one of Vermont's great products. So this is an exciting topic. For the record, my name is Kristen Haas, Agency of Agriculture, Director of Food Safety and Consumer Protection. And actually, Steve, not to put you on the spot, but I know you've done some research on the history of the current regulatory framework. I'm happy to reiterate what you have shared with me, but perhaps since you are the source of that research, may I ask you to provide an overview, and that way it's straight from the source's mouth, so to speak?
Yes, but I just came because I love to hear about maple, so that's not really fair. Yeah, so absolutely. So probably all the members of the committee know we lost a lot of our institutional historical knowledge that we had when Henry Marcus retired. So he was a longtime expert, and I'm sure could have easily given you an exact explanation for the density requirements. But I did do some statutory research and some rule research, and I didn't have a lot of time to find anything definitive. But it is clear to me that at least since 1981, the statute has allowed the agency to by rule regulate density. And before that, it looked like, and I couldn't, the annotated statutes that I can find online only go back to 1989. So I couldn't find the 1981 version itself, but it looks to me like that statutory rubric in 1981 replaced a law that was adopted in 1947. So we don't really know exactly how long the density standards go back, but we know that we've been able to regulate density since at least 1981. Now, the current rule that's in effect has been in effect since 1990. I don't know if there was a rule that preceded it. I assume there was, but I'm not certain. And I couldn't find the 1990 version of the rule online. I'm sure it exists, but it wasn't available online. The 1990 rule, though, is the current rule, and it was amended in 2005 and again in 2014. So in 2000, and I'm sorry, Senator Starr, you're on mute.
If it was changed or altered, explain that a little bit, Steve.
Well, so we think, and this is from the institutional knowledge that we still have, which is not Henry, but others, we think that it has not changed since 1990. So we think the standards have been the same, but we're not positive. But what I can tell you is that the current standard has definitely been in effect since at least 2005. Because I have the 2005 rule, and those density requirements are identical to what they are today. So we know it's been at least 16 years, but we think from talking to people in the agency who have dealt with density that they've been in effect even longer. And since the rule was adopted in 1990 and there were no changes between 1990 and 2005, we believe the density standards have been in effect since at least 1990. And so this is nothing new, I guess, is the point. But we do have a higher sugar content than the USDA requires. And one other interesting sidelight is that issue was squarely addressed in 2014. So when we amended the rule in 2014, there's an introductory paragraph to that rule amendment, and density was not changed at all. But in that introductory paragraph, the agency made explicit that it was retaining the higher density standard because to promote the Vermont maple flavor, essentially. So there's a belief, and we think it's probably true, that the higher sugar content creates a different flavor and a higher maple flavor. So whether or not that's scientifically true, I can't attest to, but we do know that the density issue was discussed, at least, and an intentional decision was made in 2014 to leave the higher density standard in place because of this, at minimum, this different reputational benefit of having the higher sugar content be the minimum. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah, and just a quick question. When you speak about rule, are you talking about a rule that goes through LCAR or a rule that you folks could change at the agency? I mean, how's that work, Steve?
So, Senator, it's by rule, and so it is something we could change, but only by going through the APA process. And that's pursuant to in our legislative authority. The legislature gave us that. It gave it what it said, and this is in section 487 of Title VI, and this was going back to at least 1981. The legislature said that the agency shall promulgate regulations for grading maple syrup, and that we may promulgate regulations for density. So that's at least since 1981, and we know that in the 1990 rule, we have basically the same standard since then, and we have created grades and density. So we've done that both through the APA process, and to change that, we would have to go back through the APA, Senator.
Yeah, Senator Collmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Steve, do you know the last time that the federal standard and the Vermont standard were the same?
So, Senator, I tried to find that out. And the current USDA standard was adopted in 2015, and and I did not find whether or not there was a standard before. And as I understand it, it's not even in statute. I think it's a voluntary marketing standard that USDA uses. So it's something that you don't have to comply with it at all. But if you're going to call it maple, then you have to meet that standard. But I did look at a journal that was published. It's I can't think of the name of it now, but it's sort of a famous maple sugar makers journal. And I think it was the 2013 copy. And in that journal, the only density standard that mentioned was Vermont standard. And it said all the hydrometers were in attune to the Vermont standard. So I'm guessing, and this is a guess, and maybe others know, that maybe there wasn't a USDA standard, and that people sort of use Vermont's by default, but that is a guess.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mark, do you know anything about that history from the extension's point of view?
Sure. Thank you, Senator Starr. And just to introduce myself, I'm Mark Isselhart, Maple Specialist with the University of Vermont Extension. So I'm an educator, do research and support the maple industry in Vermont and elsewhere. So there has been a USDA standard for a long time.
Okay.
I don't have the exact date, but I would put it somewhere in the 1940s, somewhere in there. I'd be happy to share the reference I have for that. The alignment with Vermont standards, I believe the Vermont minimum density is close to 100 years old. I think it's been around for a very long time. And I do agree that it was set intentionally to provide, not to get too into the weeds, but a better mouthfeel, which would in turn produce better flavor, a better tasting product. True, you would also boil a little bit more to get more flavor. So it's a combination of the sensory and the production of syrup with a little more density would make it a better product. And my understanding is that the maple industry in Vermont was very intentional about that and chose to differentiate it. It's true that a lot of these regulations or references are hard to find. And I know that there are some cabinets both at UVM and at the agency that probably have the answers, but I'd be more than happy to dig through when I can and provide the committee with any references I can find that aren't available online.
Well, we all strongly support our maple industry, and certainly want to make sure that our maple's the best in the world, not just here in Vermont or in the US. There's reasons why it does taste better, and probably this density level, is there for that very reason. I'm wondering, is there if a package is marked maple spread or maple candy, if the word maple is on there, does that maple within, they mix cream and other things in, does that maple have to test at a certain density level? Am I understanding that correctly, or how does that work?
So, Senator, I think probably Tucker or Dr. Haas could answer this better, but what I do know is that if it says maple, it has to be a complete maple product. So it has to be, it has to be 100% from maple sap, boiled, nothing added. There is grade A characterization, and then there's a processed characterization. And I believe the density requirement for processed is lower. So I think the density requirement could be less for something used for maple flavoring, but Tucker or Dr. Haas might better answer that, or Mark.
Yep. One of you folks want to take a crack at that?
Tucker, would you be willing to, you're the current agency subject matter expert on questions like this, so go for it.
That's little Tucker's little Henry.
Tucker has been working very hard and has done a great job on making sure that things are as they should be out there. So yeah, he's a wealth of knowledge on this, as is Mark.
Yeah.
So
I think he likes to be called Big Henry, though.
Yeah, I feel lucky enough to have received some training from Henry before he retired. So to answer your question, Senator, the density requirements relate only to grade A maple syrup. There is a processing grade density for that, but when it comes to something like a maple candy or maple butter or maple cream, the density requirement doesn't apply to those products. They're going to be a much higher density as a not a liquid product.
Yeah. So candy and spreads and all those things, lollipops and those things are different than the actual fluid maple syrup. And what's the difference, Tucker, between the density level of our maple syrup compared to if you went to using a federal reg or bought some from a state that only used the federal regulation?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. It's fairly minimal. There are two different metrics or different scales that you can measure density by. There's the Baumé scale and then the Brix scale. You can think of these as it's similar to inches and centimeters, where you've got two different scales, but that you can make. You can use either. Either is fine to use. It's perhaps easiest if I put it in terms of the Brix scale and compare it. Well, the other thing to keep in mind is that the temperature of the syrup when you're measuring it is important to that measurement. So you have to choose one of the scales and then also have a reference temperature. So it's easiest probably to make the comparison at the reference temperature of 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and also
How many?
using the brick 68.
How many? 88,
68.
68. Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
So at 68 Fahrenheit, using the bricks scale, the USDA standard is 66.0, and Vermont standard, when you make the conversion, is 66.5.
Oh, so it's pretty small then. I mean, the difference is pretty close. And
Yeah, yep.
so my next question would be, if it's so close, why, if I wanted to make maple, why would I not go with the Vermont standard, especially living here in Vermont, rather than the federal standard? I mean, must be talking about pennies a gallon difference in cost or savings.
Right. I guess the simplest answer is that there is a cost savings, even though it's going to be small. But if you, I guess it depends on how much, syrup you're producing. If you're producing, gallons and gallons of syrup, then that difference will be greater based on the volume that you're selling. But if you're a smaller producer, that's going to be a pretty minimal difference.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could figure that out. We have some producers that do 10,000 gallons, certainly. The big one up in Island Pond, Vermont, I can't even guess how many thousands of gallons they make. So if you were their size and could save a half a point, but that half a point's on 66. So in a gallon, you'd be down to maybe 3, right? 0.3. Yeah, because you got 30. If you took the degrees, can you ever change that to 100, Tucker, so that you could calculate out the savings?
Yeah, Steve actually asked me to do some of this math beforehand. So I did try and make that calculation, and if I did it correctly, it equates to less than 1%.
Yeah.
Difference.
Well, 5. If you take 0.5 and use the 66, you're down there pretty darn low, and so it's yeah, that's splitting pennies, I would say. But anyways, questions from the committee in regards to this whole discussion? So we're talking about a very slight difference between the federal level and our state level. And I guess the next question is, do you ever get any requests from the feds to do any testing for them, or do they have anybody that even goes around and checks maple at all, or maybe at imports, or if you're exporting or something? Is there any knowledge about that? No.
Senator, I was just going to say that I'm not aware in the 14 years that I've been with the agency of that being a program that that is ongoing out there. We used to, when there was a demand for it, our team under Henry Marcus's guidance used to do periodic inspections and grading of bulk containers of maple for the private sector, and we would charge a fee for service for that. So that activity went on. Not that that is, I realize that's different than what you're asking about, but I just mention it as a additional sort of scope of work that we used to do. But then that demand dried up, and so we haven't done that in quite some time. But Mark, maybe you maybe you have history on this.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll say that the only federal presence I'm aware of is through inspections of sugar houses related to FSMA, which is food safety. It's not syrup quality. And my understanding, and there have been sugar houses in Vermont that have been inspected by FDA consistently. Not a huge amount, but enough to get folks' attention. But again, this is based on food safety. They wouldn't necessarily be checking syrup density as a matter of course. This might be just a historical artifact, but I believe that the reason why the Vermont law is what it is because that Baumé scale was the dominant scale at the time. And that range goes from 36 to 37 Baumé. And if you look at the Vermont statute, it still says Baumé, and then Brix is sort of in parentheses. So I think we might be looking at is a fairly old artifact that the other industries, the other states and the federal law just didn't use Baumé. It wasn't, and they were relatively late. You know, Vermont was early in adopting maple regulations compared to the federal. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, well, you know, Vermonters and, you know, farmers that farmers were the first ones I would say that really, you know, did in the spring, you automatically tapped what maples you could and made maple syrup to, you know, for your family and to sell to make a little money. I know I had plenty of years growing up when in the late fall, you'd after the wood and all that was put away, you'd do Christmas trees. And then you had a little time off, but then you'd get ready for sugaring in the spring, and just a constant one job to the next. But you know, I think over the years, our Maple Sugar Makers Association, along, of course, with all their members, have done a good job of promoting a excellent product, and I would expect that you know, some of them older folk, well, our forefathers pushed this stuff along to stay you know, a little bit ahead of the rest of the pack, and but the issue that we wanted to get clarified, one of our, or a couple of our fellow senators were asking questions in regards to, and so they mentioned it to me, and I felt that we should look into this to see, you know, what the difference is and what the cost difference could add up to, but it's a pretty minute issue, I think. Senator Collmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm really blown away by the fact that 0.6 degrees, and I realize this is a pretty subjective kind of evaluation. It's kind of like who has the best apples in the country. Well, I guess that depends on who you ask and who has the best corn tasting products. But anyway, I'm glad that we do, and I really do think we do, but I'm just absolutely amazed that it comes down to such a, it's not infinitesimal, but it's pretty darn small difference. And congratulations to the sugar makers for promoting it and being able to market it as this obviously better product. I mean, I'm not sure I could tell if you gave me something from New York State or something from Vermont that I'd be able to say that's definitely better tasting maple, and that must be because it's from Vermont. So it's pretty amazing. And thank you all for coming in, because this is pretty interesting stuff to me.
Well, I doubt, Collimore, if you could tell because you live too close to New York and are probably already getting some of that cheaper syrup anyways.
Mr. Chair, I only buy Vermont maple syrup.
Any other questions from the committee, or do any of you have anything else you'd like to express or offer?
Senator Starr, I would also add for your committee's additional context or awareness, if anyone is interested, and I can send the link to Linda or whatever your preference is on that front, but on our website, Tucker has done a really nice job of making available to the general public and to you all, if you so choose, so a summary from the 2020 inspections, retail maple inspections that he completed, as well as a quite detailed inspection protocol, such that if anyone were to have questions about, hey, what does Tucker do when he goes into Hannaford or to the co-op and goes to inspect a lot of maple syrup? It spells that out. So if that would be of interest to you, it is available on our website, and we intend to do the same thing at the conclusion of the 2021, this year's maple inspections, just to help inform the industry as well as consumers of sort of the generic set of findings. We don't highlight any individual business findings or producer findings, but instead capture that data in a quantitative format and post it so that people can have an idea of what those findings are. So I can send Linda the web link if you would like, or send it directly to you, Senator Starr.
Just send it to our web link for Linda, and then she'll get it to all of us. And
Okay.
I thought you were going to announce that you were going to have the Maple Festival, and then you come out with all this stuff. I mean, we could have been going to a party if you'd announced the Maple Festival was on.
I am as
You're all
ready
still
as
welcome to come up.
yeah.
They sent out an email today of revised, but we love the Maple Festival. My mom ran the parade there for like 10 or 15 years.
Are they going to do it or no?
No, not, they're going to do something, but not the traditional.
Yeah, that's really quite a shindig.
If I could add one thing.
Yes, Mark.
Sorry to interrupt, Senator. I do want to just say, even though the absolute number in difference in density is small, there is a difference in mouthfeel, and I think it's important for folks to recognize. If you grade syrup at contests like at the Maple Festival and you taste hundreds of samples, there is a difference. And so the viscosity, it's different. It's not a linear relationship. So when you get little differences in density at syrup level, it can make a difference. So I appreciate the small number in units, but it can have an effect in the sensory perception of syrup. And I know that's pretty far in the weeds, but there is an effect there, I could say.
A positive effect, I would take, right?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And the other thing to point out is that the regulation has a range of from 66.9 to 68.9 Brix. So there is a pretty broad range that's acceptable for density in syrup. And we're talking at the low end, but there is a range on the high end as well. So it's not a one point that bullseye they have to hit as far as meeting the standard.
So there is some leeway in there. Steve?
Thank you, Senator Starr. I just wanted to add that it's our experience that the maple sugar producers are very interested in this standard as well. And as recently as 2019, they were telling us about their desire to have this enforced, because they do. And I think there's a good amount of advertising that they and others do that touts the higher standard. And in terms of the viscosity difference, and to Senator Collimore's point, there is apparently a notable difference, and I'll be happy to taste test to find out. But in Tucker's calculation, the amount of sap is really pretty minuscule for that difference in density. And so if Tucker's calculated what for the average of when the sugar content is at average, and it takes about 40 gallons to boil of sap to boil 1 gallon of syrup, it's only about 0.3 gallons more sap to reach the Vermont standard. So that's really, in terms of the economic differential, it seems pretty minuscule for retaining that advantage that producers have kind of fought for, I think.
I'll say that this committee was lucky enough to at one time have former legislator Carol Brannigan on it, and then we used to have Harvey Smith from the House Ag Committee come in, and they both had sugar they both made sugar, and I could taste the difference between the two. And there was a contest about who was better and all that kind of stuff. Seems like there was maybe a third or fourth person involved too, but I don't remember.
Yeah, Carolyn always won, I think.
Yeah.
Of course, she kept us supplied with that all
Yes, she did.
season long.
We were a little
kinda-
biased there. Yeah.
But you think about this whole issue. If I'm a syrup maker and Dave Marvin wants to come along and buys my syrup, he's going to get syrup that should test 6.6, right? And then if he takes and does whatever he does to it and sells it cuts it down to just 66 instead of 6.5, he's the one that's making the money on it, isn't the sugar maker? Because we all are at the same standard, and usually, as far as I know, other than the grade, if you meet the certain grade, you get paid the same price if you're from Franklin County or from Orleans County. So, if somebody's going to make some money by diluting this, it really isn't quite right. But anyways, anything else from any of you folks? If not, Mark, did you have?
Well, I just wanted to say that there is actually a differentiation for bulk syrup being sold. It's actually a lower minimum density for bulk syrup. I believe it's 65.9. To your point about a producer would be advantageous to meet so as not to lose any if they sold it in bulk, which close to 90% of Vermont syrup is sold in bulk now. That's changed in the last, I would say in the last 30, 40 years, it's gone from about roughly 50-50 to now close to 90%. So, but there is a differentiation for bulk syrup.
Is that reason because the volume that we make has increased, but yet our population and people eating maple hasn't grown a whole heck of a lot? Is that why it moved up to quite?
Well, we haven't done a whole lot of research to understand why, but I think the best explanation is that the big growth we've seen in the industry in the last 20, 25 years has been in the larger sized operations. And it's very difficult to market syrup retail. It takes a lot of money and time. And I think a lot of those producers are content and have developed businesses that can be successful, but selling to a packer. That's my understanding.
Yeah. Any other questions, statements? If not, thanks a lot, folks, for coming in this is very helpful, and we'll pass the word around that we looked into it, and I think people will appreciate that. So good enough, and thanks again, and we'll see you sometime along.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed being surrounded by experts. It's been an easy gig for me. So this is awesome. Thank you all.
Take care.
Well, the boss, as long as you have good help, you don't need to know everything. Just hire good help. Yeah, take care, folks.
Take care.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Sure.
So, committee, I don't know if we got, if we had any of our folks from yesterday come back today or not. Gail, we got anybody in the waiting room?
There is no one in the waiting room right now.
Yeah.
I did see an email from Graham, Mr. Chair. He sent it about 10:20 this morning.
Yep.
What did he sent an email, Brian?
Yeah, he sent it to everybody. We're sincerely grateful for your willingness to take testimony on S25. We offer here some bullet points about making cannabis an agricultural product, and look forward to chatting with you again. So my guess is that they will be coming in.
Well, I mention that we would try to work them back in today?
Yes.
Yeah. But I think I did tell them 11, right around 11.
You did.
Did you folks get your, did you get copies of what we received from Michelle?
No. I think only you got it, or you and Chris maybe.
Yeah.
You want me to forward it?
Well, because what we got from Graham is pretty long and involved. I mean, it's like a whole discussion. I mean, I think that what we were hoping to get from Michelle was something kind of short and direct. That was
we did. Yeah. Could you do that, Chris? Because I doubt if Gail has that.
No, I don't.
Yeah. So it is short. I don't know if you can see that, but it's pretty short, and there's only either 2 items in that language or 3 that I think that we might be interested in chatting about. And we don't want to, you go and load a whole pickup load up, Sears going to back it up to the dump and dump it. You send him something that he can use, he may, simple and short and direct, we might, get it added in.
So I just sent you the language, and I'm trying to open it up now.
Senator Pearson, did you include Linda in that?
No, but I will send it to her and to you right now.
Should this be posted on the committee page, Senator Starr?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, we're going to talk about it first and see if, if the committee wants to do it once we chat about it, fine. But this is just for our discussion purposes, for the purpose of following through on the request of the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee that he wanted us to look at the ag part of the cannabis bill.
Guys,
I'm not
thank
sure
you.
what you have, Mr. Chair, but what Chris sent is 2 pages long.
Yeah.
Well, it, but isn't the bulk of it on this very first page where it raises the minimum or the small guys from 1,000 to 1,500 square feet,
Yeah,
and then down, and it shall down a couple of lines, cultivator licenses and shall include production limits. And then down in B near the bottom, the largest maximum size would be 10,000 square feet.
Says
30,000. You're looking at the first draft, Bobby.
Yeah, I thought it was 10 too.
Well,
Also-
that's what it is now, I think.
No, we have no limit now. We have talked in the past about 10,000. The suggestion from some of the folks yesterday was 10,000. But that seemed very small to me. And you know, but I'll confess, I don't really have a clue.
It's a quarter of an acre, Chris.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know,
20 by 50.
as the cap, the biggest. So here's where I thought through, and this is why I landed at 30,000. In Massachusetts, the smallest level is 5,000 square feet. We're proposing going from 1,000 to 1,500. So that's about a third of what Massachusetts does. In Massachusetts, the cap is 100,000 square feet.
Oh,
what,
that's 2 acres.
Yeah,
2.5 acres. That's big.
So I decided to stick with the third of Massachusetts. So both of them are scaled to about a third of Massachusetts. So 30,000 square feet. That's not even an acre. It's about 2/3 of an acre.
3/4.
Yeah. What's an acre? 43,000.
42, 43. Depends on who's running the ruler.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I'm open to discussing it, but this does not seem to me to be a runaway operation here. We need, you know, if anything, there's a risk in other states, excuse me, of running out of product. So I don't know. Anyway, that's the logic. We just went on both levels with about a third of what Massachusetts is permitted.
See, like, if you went to the 30,000 square feet, would that be indoor, Chris, or outdoor? Because you could build a building over that if you wanted, without a whole lot of cost.
About a third of what Massachusetts is permitted. It's silent on indoor, outdoor.
And even on the small end, it's silent, right? But
Gail had a question, Bobby.
Who?
Gail.
Oh, that's all right. I was just going to let you know that the witnesses have joined us.
Okay.
Okay. You can let them in.
Anyway, I mean, I'm reminded that one of the challenges here is the premise in the law has been that we're charging the board to kind of figure out roughly how much they think we need, and therefore how many permits and what kind of permits are needed to achieve the volume of the expected business. And in historically over the last many years, the legislature's tried to come up with, you should have this many small permits, this many medium, this many big. And as it was advancing, I think the feeling was the board will figure out the lay of the land. They'll figure out, therefore, how many permits in each category and the fees that will go along with it, because after all, you need the fees to raise the money to handle it. And so the risk that we have here is that disconnect between all of those moving parts if we're injecting ourselves. So anyway, trying to come up with some logic, I just went with a third of what they're doing in Massachusetts, figuring that we would want to have a smaller scale than our neighbors to the south.
And ours both on both ends do they have a top end on theirs too, Chris?
Yeah, 100,000 square feet.
Yeah, so we went a third on the low end and a third on the upper end. No. We went a third of theirs on both of ours. So that put us at 1,500 on the low end and 30,000 square feet on the upper end, maximum size. So, and is there, have you looked at, the board would determine how many of each of those is allowed? So
that's my understanding of the law. Yes, already.
So you could, if you hung back and didn't get in, you could be excluded from participating because the board could feel that the market is full. Am I stating that right?
Well,
they wouldn't issue you a license if the market was full and I'm a year or two behind of applying and getting in. The board, if everything was full, the board could regulate the supply of that product or of the growers that are supplying the market.
As far as I understand it, yeah.
Yeah, and we're not addressing that here.
No.
If anything, we're making it probably more likely that more businesses come in because we're making sure that, although at the small end we're making them bigger, so it's hard to know. But
I think overall, Chris, you're right. We're clearly favoring smaller enterprises.
But heck, if you had a plot that was 10,000 square feet, I mean, you aren't going to be able to have more than 8 or 10 plants. I mean, those things really get bushy. You know, I thought they had to have like 6 feet or something around them, you know, to have a row down through to, you know, a pathway, and you aren't going to have many plants on 10,000 square feet. So anyway,
I mean, it's impossible to know entirely. What we're saying here is there's an entry level, a craft level that's a little bit easier to get into, requires less capital, so it's presumably easier for you know, different kinds of folks to get in, BIPOC and others. We give them a head start in the structure in terms of the timing, so that the hope has always been that gives them an entry into the market, not just that they can be up and running, but that they actually can sell their product and create some business relationships that are meaningful. You know, there's not a lot of guarantees here, but that is the vision.
No. That's farming. There's no guarantees.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of our vegetable growers would like this kind of timeline advantage, but we could say the vegetable growers of Franklin County can start selling their vegetables 3 months ahead of Chittenden County. See if that would help.
Well, they
We don't
probably
call them farmers, we call them gardeners.
they'll probably cross-pollinate their carrots with a little cannabis and say, hey, I've got some carrots that'll spike you up here.
Calm me
but
down. I
anyway,
think it works the other way, Bobby.
So guys, we've got Jeffrey and Josh back. Maddie's with us. I don't know if Graham's with us or not, but good to see you guys back. We did get a change, some changes done to the bill that I don't know if have you guys been in so you could hear us chatting, or did you just get in?
I've been in for a few minutes, but I think it might be helpful if you're willing to just share the language that you're looking at, either verbally or otherwise, because we don't have access to that. So it's hard to know what you're referring to.
Well, that's just as well. It's better if you don't see it.
As you know, we've also submitted some of our own, so we're happy to just look at that.
Well, Gail, did you get a copy of that that Chris sent?
I did, Mr. Chair.
Is that something that you could pull up on the screen? That I don't know how deep I think, Chris, did you have those changes on the first page made so we can use just the little section, or do we need to have?
I think it got a little longer because in talking to Michelle, she remembered she had to loop in the current use piece. You can't just change it in the amounts, but you also have to change it in the permission for current use. So I think that's why the second go around was a little longer, Bobby. But
yeah,
I could email it, or Gail could. It'd probably be easiest just to post it to the website, I think, and that way.
Yeah, then you guys could pull it up, right, Maddie?
Yeah, that would be
Senator Starr. I will have to. I don't have access to your page, so let me notify Linda. And in the meantime, why don't I put it on my screen to share?
Yeah.
Okay.
But basically, what we have gotten done so far is, yesterday we talked about the small growers being capped out. If you go over to page 2, we increased that number from 1,000 square feet to 1,500 square feet, so that our small craft people, could grow a little bit larger crop, and even 1,500 feet is what's that? A little strip, 30 by 50, which is not very big. I don't know. We were talking before you folks came on about how much room a plant actually has to have and keep it separated from the next plant. But I know I've looked at some hemp fields, and it seems like they've got to be at least 4 or 6 feet apart. Like, is cannabis a plant? Do any of you know how much room you need for a cannabis plant?
I can take that, Chair Starr, and thanks for asking. And good to see everybody again. Good morning, almost good afternoon. Yes, indoor, considerably less space is needed. We're talking 1 foot to 2 feet, maybe 3 feet max, I want to say indoor, whereas outdoor, yes. The spacing would be anywhere from, we had said 9 to 15 feet, which of course would preclude, smaller plots, but larger plots with larger plants need more spacing. So you're right, 5, 10, 15 feet for outdoor. Indoor, not so much, 1 foot to 2 feet.
So could you use, say you go tell somebody a foot or two. I mean, we're better off to use the larger number if we can. Not that would be in any rules or laws, but it would, for the people that are skeptical about the whole situation, it would seem to me if we use the maximum footage, it would certainly sell those people on the idea, well, this isn't too bad. So could you use 3 feet indoors, and I mean, just roughly thinking, in maybe 6. See, we didn't differentiate between inside and outside. We've left that language sort of alone. Chris?
Well, Bobby, I went around and around with Michelle on this because, as I've said, I would love to find us a way to be encouraging outdoor growth. It was hard, and as soon as you touch it in one place, suddenly we're not looking at a 2-page thing. We're sending Sears quite a complicated situation. So, given that we've had a half a day to deal with this, I'll just be honest and say I tried to figure it out and we couldn't. I'm certainly very supportive of us doing that. But it is, especially now that we're limiting or we're putting numbers down. Do we mean those to be outdoor numbers or indoor numbers? We would have to make some decisions, and I'm not. I was also trying to say to Michelle, well, just direct the board. They can figure out different tiers based if it's indoor or outdoor. She sort of thought that they could already do that. Massachusetts, they delineate that way along with the fees, but not with the tiers. So it's cheaper if you're going to be outside, reflecting that you're less resource intensive, I guess. But anyway, it's complicated. What can I tell you? And I failed to do it. And I'm sure people have ideas of how we could do it. I do as well. But it will not be, a short memo if we try to craft those solutions.
Oh, I think we're better off to leave it vague. If you go outside, you're going to grow bigger plants. But if you've got 1,500 feet instead of 1,000, shouldn't you still be able, a small craft grower, cultivator, wouldn't he be able to still make $1 or $2 if we could get rid of his product? You guys, do you?
If I may, Senator, I can quickly speak. This is Graham Unangster, Phoenix Policy Director at Rural Vermont, and sorry if you hear a little noise in the background. I have my 11-month-old daughter with me. But there is language in the bill currently around, what the number of square feet, the 1,000 square foot rule, and it doesn't, as you said, distinguish between indoor and outdoor, and that is what we find extremely problematic. Because assuming it goes to the CCB, and as we're saying, they can make all these distinctions, if it's legislatively mandated that the lowest license is 1,000 square feet, then they can't, for example, say, well, for outdoor growing, the smallest license should be 4,000 square feet. And that's what our point is. We've recommended that the small craft tier for outdoor would be 4,000, and the small craft tier for indoor would be 1,000, for the reasons that Jeffrey just mentioned, as well as the crop loss that Joshua talked about yesterday, and just all of those things. And I'll pass it over to Jeffrey or Joshua to respond more.
I just want
just quickly. Oh, sorry. Go.
I just wanted to add, if you don't mind, Josh, go after me. Chair Starr, and I appreciate the concerns you bring up, Senator Pearson. I echo the urgency, though, of my colleague, and I want to provide some context here. These are simplifications of the law by inserting a 4 to 2 to 1 ratio. We think it provides clarity where there is currently uncertainty for farmers and small businesses. And we are not plucking this out of thin air. These are firm precedent that you find in agrarian states, Northern California, parts of Oregon. You may not see it necessarily in Massachusetts. You'll see it in Maine, where they have, like Vermont, a larger agricultural community, they embrace these simplified standards out of the gate using legislation. I just want to provide that context. Sorry, Josh.
No, thank you. I also, for further context, a few other things to think about with the difference between outdoor and indoor and mixed light growing. Outdoor growing, you're only getting one harvest per year. So while your plants may be larger and you may be getting more product, you're banking on one harvest, maybe two if you're doing light deprivation in a mixed light situation, but you need to have a greenhouse in order to do that process. Whereas indoor, you can rotate harvests through separate rooms and have more steady supply through the season. Also, in terms of price per pound, indoor product is generally regarded as higher quality. So while it's much more expensive to invest in an indoor grow, the poundage that you get is worth more on a weight basis than if you were growing outdoors. So, these are some of the dynamics here that definitely need to be taken into consideration. And while I agree it can get complex if that gets too narrowly defined, at a broad level, distinguishing outdoor, mixed light, and indoor differentiation on the basis of size of grow or anything like that, I think can be a pretty straightforward exercise. And I think the language that we provided in bullet point form is relatively simple. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I would just echo what everyone said. And I'd be interested to know maybe a little bit more, Senator Pearson, about, what's particularly complicated about that and whether our language is helpful in really providing some clarification. I would also just say, this is the first time that we've been able to take up this bill with the Ag Committee, and we're really grateful to be able to do so. And I think that this issue of defining, indoor versus outdoor cultivation and putting some parameters around those is really one of the main cruxes of what we're trying to get at with looking at this more as an agricultural product. And frankly, myself, I haven't been as deeply engaged in this issue for as many years as my colleagues here have, but this is one of the few areas where I have had conversations, for example, with Senator Polina and, previously Senator Zuckerman around how the agricultural aspect of this could really be addressed. So I think this is something that's, worth putting a little bit of effort into, if nothing else.
I don't know how complicated Senator Sears is going to want us to make this into, but I would presume that on most small farms or places where they might get into producing hemp or cannabis, that a lot of these places have got a building that's 30 by 50, and they could do inside growing pretty easy. Whereas if they put this outside, it's got to be fenced in a secure manner, and you've got to have protective devices to monitor and keep track of everything. And I was more interested in getting that number, trying to get that number up to a size that a person could make some money at. If you increase the size by 50%, go from 1,000 to 1,500, it makes quite a difference in the end result, or it should, on how much money you might be able to make off from being a little craft cultivator and being able to use 1,500 feet. But no one has mentioned yet how much, if everything worked perfect, how much you could do on 1,500 feet. I think we talked a little yesterday about 1,000 square feet. Any estimates on 1,500 feet? No.
I would just quickly say, Senator, just to address what you said about the farms having like a facility they could convert to an indoor growing facility, that's a significant undertaking, and a lot of farms I think would prefer just to do what they know how to do and grow outside in a reasonable amount of space that makes sense for their farm. A lot of people also don't have structures like that are readily usable or adaptable to such a use. So I think that to answer your question on 1,500 square feet, I mean, if you take what Jeffrey just said about, 2 to 3 feet between plants indoor and 10 feet, let's say, between outdoor plants, you get at least some idea about the number of plants. And I don't have any amount of production, but just to remind you that the numbers we came to were based on some surveys and studies of Vermont growers and cultivators currently. So it was meant to reflect what would be a reasonable livelihood for a small scale of producer. And that 1,000 square feet we suggested was specifically for indoor in that survey.
I don't know if you ran some quick numbers, if you had 30 by 50 to do 1,500 square feet, you could go roughly 10 plants, 3 plants long, which would be, and then you could go 5 wide or 4. So,
So, sorry, I just want to offer some context on the what you asked for about the finances surrounding the different sizes and projected harvests. I just did some quick back of the envelope calculations. So if you're growing a plant outdoors in Vermont, banking on a pound of usable product from that plant is a good goal that you can reliably hit if you grow well. It's not guaranteed. Sometimes it's less, but that'd be a successful harvest. Outdoor product in a mature market, I think from what we see in other states, reasonably could hit $800 a pound. That's if it's, if you're growing higher quality for outdoor product in a mature market. So that is $120,000 a year in revenue for a 1,500 square foot outdoor plot. That doesn't include any costs the farmer is going to undertake, any labor costs, any water, any nutrients, any soil, any compost, any fencing, if that is in the bill, although we of course hope that is removed as a requirement for outdoor grows. If you're growing indoor and you get 3 pulls a year from 1,500 square feet, and if that is all flower, mind you, that some of that will have to be vegetative growth. So these could be very well be inflated numbers. 3 harvests a year indoors, you're talking about significantly more revenue if that product fetches a higher price at market. If we take $1,800 a pound for a wholesale number, which again is generous in a mature market, that you're looking at $810,000 of revenue a year as that size company. Once again, though, you have electricity costs, you have equipment costs, things breaking all the time, you have labor costs. So you can definitely run a profitable business at that scale indoors, but you can see the difference in the cash and the revenue for an outdoor grow operating at 1,500 square feet versus an indoor grow operating at 1,500 square feet. And therein is why, from a farmer's perspective, differentiating outdoor, indoor is so important.
But if we're silent on this, you can do either. As long if it isn't talked about, it's kind of silent. So if you're Graham just said, well, you'd rather grow outdoors. Well, hell, if you could generate $800,000 compared to $100,000, you can build quite a building for a couple $100,000, I would think. I just built a 40 by 70 building for $130,000, and it's all insulated, lighted, heated, the whole 9 yards. And
totally.
And I could have 2 levels to grow hemp or cannabis on if I put a floor in the middle. So, why would you want to fool around outdoors if unless you wanted to build a market? I don't know what the thinking is.
Well, we got, I believe it was 60% of respondents, growers that responded to VGA's survey in the state plan on growing outdoors. I think it's also important to remember that extracts are a huge element of the industry, and that extracted product is going to require a lot of supply going in, a lot of bulk supply, which outdoor is, perfectly suited for. So when we're thinking about supporting a market, while yes, it certainly is incentivizing if you can afford to invest in indoor cultivation and go through the hiccups and risks that come with indoor cultivation. It's a more fragile environment than growing outdoors. You can, it's definitely incentivizing for people to do that. But we, of course, are, like Senator Pearson said, I think there's a lot of good reason to try to encourage outdoor growing. And there is a lot of the market that will have demand for outdoor growing, and the scale that's required to feed the supply in the state from an extraction product perspective, I think, should just be reasonably considered when we're thinking about what a farmer growing outdoors should be able to do in participating in the market. So,
Chris?
I would just say that, it's important to remember these small licenses are held under a lighter regulatory touch. So we are working hard to see if we can't introduce people into the universe. And I guess I have a question for Graham. It's too bad Maddie had to leave, but I was in meetings that maybe people didn't see, where we had to fight like hell with other counterparts to get 1,000 square feet of outdoor land used, that's in current use, to be maintained in current use, 1,000 square feet. So the proposal that we will now, you would have us take back to make that 4,000 or whatever, 6,000 square feet and go, it's just not going to happen. And so I get that that's not what you want us to tell you. But there will become a strategy point here of, do we have any bill at all, or do we ask for everything we want and get nothing, or do we make some improvements and continue to advance this? And that's not fair, and life is filled with these choices in our jobs, and it's not fun for any of us, but that is the reality. So my question, Graham, have you even once talked to Janet Ansell about increasing the threshold that she would be open to allowing in current use? Because that is what we're talking about as we talk about these changes in numbers. Even shifting to 1,500 is going to be a battle with her, but at least
I think we could win that one, Chris.
I think so too, but it won't, and it's not just her, but she represents a lot of folks in the other, well, obviously she's powerful on the committee, but it's just a tricky dynamic that I have to, it's part of my calculation as I try to think of the right move here. But Graham, do you have any indication that she's interested in being more flexible than she was 5 months ago?
I mean, as I've said, I reached out to Janet via email, I think a month ago or so after I last, one of the times we spoke, and you recommended I did. And I will remind you that Janet Ansell is my personal representative, but I'm here in my professional capacity working at rural Vermont. So I understand that she has a particular positionality and power within the State House as well. She responded, like I said yesterday, that she wasn't in charge of agricultural issues until you told us yesterday that she was sort of critical in taking apart, what you're talking about now. We didn't know specifically, we can't see inside those committees of conference to see who does what at what point. She told me that she's not on an agricultural committee. She only does money stuff, and she doesn't deal with these types of issues. I'm happy to talk with her.
Current use is a money thing, right? So this is where she gets her hooks into. I'm not trying to,
No,
that's
I hear
just
you.
the reality that we're working in.
Well, let me just complete my response. I will reach out to her. I have her phone number now, and she's invited me to call her, and I can have that conversation with her. But I think from our perspective as well, represent what is the real needs of our members and of the agricultural community. And I think to not differentiate between indoor and outdoor use and to not create a scale difference really makes very little sense in the ways that we've all put forth. And I think that, it's really unclear, and there'd be clear inequity if we have 1,000 square foot in law, but it's not differentiated, and the CCB itself can't actually make a different craft license number for when they do differentiate, because 1,000 square feet is already in law and it's mandated. And that's a concern we have as well. And our strategy, I guess, is, like I said, is just to push. We weren't involved in this conversation very much. We've been trying to be involved, and we hope that this year, if that happens, that we can go into Janet's committee and, and speak to her and say, we're representing our community. This is why this makes sense, and have a conversation about it. But, last year we really weren't able to be a part of that conversation.
Josh, did you have something?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add on to that, that these policy positions are really coming from a perspective of advocating for, what we see as the bulk of the Vermont industry, the local Vermont businesses, the in-state owned businesses especially. And, I think if Janet Ansel is going to strike these things from it, then we can do our job in advocating for why this makes policy sense in her committee with that stuff in the bill, because it's based on merit. So if we're here agreeing that these things make sense and that they would be right, but that Janet Ansel wouldn't approve of them, then I would ask that we let Janet Ansel not approve of them instead of not putting them in now because we don't think she's going to approve of them.
Well, I got a few more years in this business than you have, Josh. I've been at this for 40 odd years, passing stuff in Montpelier, and the art of compromise is probably the greatest asset that a legislator can have. And you learn that you don't always get the biggest bite of the apple the first time you go to bite it, but yet you go back a year or two later and you get another bite and you get another bite. And whereas if you don't get that first little bite, you're never going to get anything. You got to start all over again. And if we get going, if we can get that 1,500 feet, get a cap on the top so the big guys don't rob the market. And then if we find in a year or two that, hey, this is all working really slick, we could use, the little guys could use a little bit bigger plots. They could be outside. I've never seen a bill that we couldn't amend. And that most of them get amended. And usually the second year, you always do a review of any major legislation that you passed the year or two before, just to make leveling out adjustments. And so the second time around, if things are going well, it's much easier to make those adjustments and move to where you really should have been in the first place, but it takes you a year or two to get there. I'd lot rather get a little bite at the apple than no apple at all. And Janet's in a position where, hell, she could stop the whole show as being chair. and there's no denying that, that's just the way the rules and the way it works. It's like Nancy Pelosi in Washington almost. But anyways, other comments, Jeffrey?
If I may, really fast, Graham, just to cap this topic from my perspective, to underscore what other states have told us, is basically that 1-to-4 ratio stands. So in terms of production and a livelihood, we should expect roughly 1,000 square feet inside is equivalent to, ultimately at the end of the day, 4,000 square feet outside. So it would be, Vermont would be the exception if we did not have acknowledgement and differentiation between indoor and outdoor. So I just want to underscore that, and I do understand process, but I also think it's mindful to be aware of what the industry is doing and what other states have told us. Vermont is not leading this, so there are lessons learned from other states. So I'll just leave it at that. And Graham, I do believe you have a follow up.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to speak to the. If I may, I just wanted to speak to the max production cap that you mentioned, Senator Starr. I think if you all put out a max production cap of, I think I heard you say around 30,000 square feet, without differentiating between indoor or outdoor mixed light, it would be very hard for our coalition to support, because we're recommending a max production cap of 10,000 square feet for indoor production and 40,000 for outdoor production. So if you put in 30,000 without differentiating, you're essentially tripling what we think is appropriate for indoor production being allowed. And which makes it even more inequitable for outdoor production, which is the opposite of our intention. So that's a concern I'm expressing, and I think it's the same at the baseline. And I don't know if it's possible simply to put in the ratio that Jeffrey is recommending as a standard in the law itself. But I'll leave it there.
Well, I would just say I'm open to putting in larger amounts for outdoor and the commensurate change to current use. That's fine with me. I think it's a real roll of the dice, but that doesn't bother me if if you're comfortable with the gamble that we don't get anything, I'll follow your lead.
I mean, if I may, Chris, Senator Pearson, if it would help, we do have sister organizations in other states. We can bring policy directors to these conversations if it would be helpful with Ansel and others who can speak to this indoor-outdoor differentiation that they've been operating under for several years. But we're welcome to bring those resources if that's helpful from other states.
Well, it's not for me to say what's helpful with her. She's an opponent of this. You guys, it's an inconvenient reality that we face that has held us back for years. Okay. I mean, I've been pushing this when I was in the House in 2014. I forced a floor vote on this. She was opposed. I mean, you don't like the reality. I don't like the reality. But that's just what we're dealing with. So if you want to say to Janet, we're gonna now make you say that 4,500 square feet of outdoor is part of current use. Go for it. You guys make that call, and I'll back you up. I think it's the wrong strategy, and I think you'll get zero bill. But that's your choice.
If you go 1,500 indoor, that's 6,000. That's outside. I mean, hell. It won't cut it. You can't. That's pushing. That'd be pushing an acre, I believe, and they aren't gonna buy that. But hey, I got some people that want to grow this stuff. I haven't got personally a freaking dog in the fight. So, and I don't even know if I don't think I've ever voted for this in the first place, because I felt that we had enough drugs floating around out there without legalizing another one to pump into whoever, then have to rehabilitate everybody. I mean, yeah. But anyhow, if I don't know.
Bobby. It's Anthony.
Oh, your picture. Okay.
Yeah, something's weird with my iPad. I can't seem to get my video on. I've been listening though to this whole conversation. I've just also been dealing with some semi-emergency stuff going on in my other committee. But I just wanted to chime in and say that I think that we all should take to heart what Christopher and others have been saying about the difficulty of moving this bill forward at this point. It's kind of an inconvenient truth that we have to deal with. It's that it's not really up to us to pass the bill that we want to pass. It's what we can pass. I think that the idea of differentiating the indoor and outdoor, we could do that maybe in a simple way, given what Michelle gave us, where we just say 30,000 is outside, X 10,000 is inside, or something like that. But I guess all I'm saying is, you know, we're down to the wire here, and we've been talking about this bill for 5 years, and we're coming pretty close to like having to stop the conversation and bite the bullet and say what we want to do. And I would just caution us to try to come up with something that is doable, because there are people who would rather just see the bill die on the vine, and I would hate to see that happen. Sorry, I can't see you all. I can see you, but you can't see me.
Oh yeah, you can see that.
Yeah, I see that.
I don't know.
But I think at this point in time, it's really important to keep it relatively simple. I mean, the Ag Committee got this bill. The Ag Committee got the bill just the other day for the first time ever, which is unfortunate. But I don't think we can afford to have these like long, winding conversations about what we really hope to have, because we're basically down to we have like an hour to like work this out between today and tomorrow. We just don't have the time or the ability to like work it too much more.
Well, I thought it was 1 to 4, Anthony, not 1 to 3.
Well, sure, whatever. Yeah, no, that's fine. I whatever works.
Well, whatever works. You want to, I mean, we have numbers that kind of support, I thought, 1 to 4.
Yeah.
If you grow inside, you have 10,000 feet, but if you grow outside, you should be able to go 40,000 feet. And that's what other states have done, and what has worked is, I think, am I right on that, guys?
Sorry, I was muted.
So-
Correct. California, Oregon, Maine, there are several of the more agrarian-leaning states and territories of states that have adopted that sort of ratio. In fact, there are others, parts of Oregon, that have a 5 to 1. So it varies, but we thought a 4 to 1 was appropriate for Vermont.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody wants to, the committee members, any of you want to make a suggestion or a motion to propose that, and then if it carries, we'll have Michelle do the number and add that to the proposal that we're going to send to Sears.
So I more than just the concept though, when Michelle and I spent about half an hour about it last night trying to figure out how to do it simply, it wasn't simple. So so it's not just the concept. I think, you know, do we want to say, you know, here's the small end indoor, here's the big end indoor. The board can figure out a commensurate that's roughly 4 to 1 relationship for outdoor. Is it, you know, do we want to express it as empowering them to do that? Do we want to direct them to do that? I think they're already empowered, but I think we could probably make that more plain. How do you want to deal with the tax implications? Should there be a commensurate fee adjustment, or is it, you know, in this tier the fee is X and you're indoor or outdoor at those? There are a lot of questions to unpack, and as Senator Polina says, you know, we got 12 minutes now, no lawyer to help us. So that was
Chris, do we have to solve all those issues? I mean, the whole beautiful part of this process is we can look at maybe just the quick agricultural issues and push it along. I just, you know, I think you keep him. I guess where I am is let's get to a place where we can move it and let the process continue to play out.
Well, so what does that mean?
I would just get the thing out of our committee with, slight adjustments like your amendment or something else to move it. I mean, I don't have a dog in this fight. Like Bobby said, I'm just honestly not that 100% that interested in the topic and don't want to spend that much time on it, but also don't want to kill it.
We could just say, since we're only writing a memo back,
Yeah.
here's some of the language. We also encourage you to figure out some way to direct the board to acknowledge that outdoor grows should be bigger. We could do that.
My only dog in this fight is I don't want our growers, our farmer growers, to end up like our dairy guys. If we can
I
help.
just don't think we're going to figure that out in a day or two, Bobby. That's my thought is, that's a long.
No, but if we cap the damn size that somebody can get to be, we've taken care of that. And there's plenty of money at where we capped it for anybody to be able to survive and do okay. But it allows more growers, because if you let one guy grow 4 acres, I mean, just think of the number of little guys you're bumping out of the way. And then they corner the market, they start selling cheaper, and they crowd the little guys more, and the little guys more, and pretty soon the big guys have got the whole show.
I'm fine putting that cap in. I think, again, it has a long ways to go, but if that's a recommendation here, I can live with that.
Me too. I don't much care about the minimum. I don't see that, who cares?
But the max.
Yeah, I think the max is way more important.
Yeah.
And I'm sympathetic to Chris's question about the current use, but I don't know that that's our business here. I mean, I don't know.
Well, that's a whole nother fight. And what the hell, if it is taken out, what's the big deal on a little plot, 30 by 50? I mean, it isn't going to cost the farmer $20. I mean, more a year in taxes. I mean, I don't know why there's a big fight over that anyways. If, we aren't talking about big bucks here.
I think it's wrapped up in whether or not it's considered agriculture and some of those questions, but the Senate hasn't historically gotten its way on that one.
It's certainly agriculture, but say, how long are you going to argue over the change in your pocket if somebody's stealing the dollar bills out your back pocket? You want to be able to count here a little bit.
So we'll try to wrap this up tomorrow then, Mr. Chair. What do you want to do?
Well, as soon as we can get Michelle going, if we'll talk to her about these numbers and put it into a form that we can send to Sears. Yeah, we'll wrap it up in the morning.
We're kind of lucky because one of the members of Senate Judiciary is not here today, Senator White, so they won't be taking a vote on it until tomorrow anyway.
Oh, good. And of course, they're a morning committee. So, yeah, Josh, you had a question?
Graham, if you want to jump in, then I can go after you.
Oh, Graham's ahead. Oh, yeah, he's got his little yellow hand up. We just go like this so I can really see the hand. Go ahead, Graham.
Thank you, Senator. Just in light of you asking for recommendations and describing the limitations that you're facing, if you're just writing a memo to Senate Judiciary and that's what you're sending, I think that 1-to-4 ratio is important from our perspective. And when you speak to the cap being important to you, I think, as I said, like we would not support a cap unless it was articulated via indoor or outdoor, because we would see it as potentially making it more inequitable for outdoor producers if it was just stated that 30,000 square feet, for example, was the cap without stating that that was for outdoor production explicitly. So if you're just writing a memo, I think those are the most important things for us. If you want to do the floor and the ceiling and just the indoor outdoor ratios, and I understand the the directive for us to compromise and to consider that more. And I would just remind the committee too that we originally had like 5 or 6 pages of proposed amendments, including our racial equity amendments. They were almost 20 pages or more than 20 pages. And this is our only opportunity we've ever had to speak to an agricultural committee on this. So we do appreciate it. We understand your limitations. We have really tried to compromise and really tried to isolate and, you know, prioritize what we're speaking with you about. And I think those are recommendations that I think could go to the Senate Judiciary Committee.
So 1 to 4 indoor, outdoor, and no cap, did I hear you say, Graham?
Well, if the
No, I think,
sorry.
I was just going to say we support the cap at the ratio of 1 to 4, 10,000 feet indoors and 40,000 feet outdoors.
Yeah. Yeah. Josh?
Yeah, I just wanted to call out one thing that it sounded like we had common ground around a few minutes ago, which is reducing the cap for indoor grow down to 10,000 square feet, which is our recommendation, and I think more appropriate, even going off of Massachusetts. Their population is about 10 times larger than us. So if 30,000 square feet was 1/3, 10,000 square feet would be 1/10, and that's in line with the population difference between the two states. And then if it was 10,000 square feet indoor cap with outdoor grows being allowed to be 4 times larger than indoor grows, that would be quite simple language that achieved the differentiation between outdoor and indoor and set those caps. And I do appreciate this committee being so concerned about capping the production and protecting the small farmers, because I certainly, for one, am in agreement that that's very important. So I want to express that acknowledgement.
Just to follow up on that, a little bit of industry insight. I agree the 10,000 indoor cap is what we should be reaching. Chair Starr, in the industry, when you get into the 30,000 square foot for indoor cultivation, that's when you get into the factory farm type activity, which we're trying to avoid in the state. That is the large sort of output of cannabis indoor. That's that 30,000. That's what we're trying to avoid. Let's cap that at 10,000. I just want to put it out there. That's what the industry sees.
So 10 inside 40, yeah, 10, 40, yeah, 1 to 4. Yeah. Committee, anything else that you'd like to add or talk about?
I would just say I'm not convinced 10 is the right number.
No,
but
we'll talk about
that.
Sure. And looking for my schedule for tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, we've got just a couple of things right at 9 o'clock. And then we'll try to get this issue wrapped up, by mid-morning, and get it down to Senator Sears. If we could get hold of Michelle later today, maybe we could get her to start drafting up, some language once we chat again. Anything else for this morning? Good, everybody. Well, thanks, guys, for showing back up today. I don't know if we're going to wear that soil all out plowing it here. We may not be able to even grow any cannabis if we keep plowing the dirt. Going to ruin it. But no, I think we made, we're making some headway, and hopefully it'll help our small growers and our regular growers. And so if you want to punch back in, if you're around, want to get in tomorrow morning, that's great. We should be able to be on to this by 9:30, well, 9:45 maybe. So with that, if there's no other business, I'll adjourn the meeting, and thanks again for you guys for your time and your help, and we'll hopefully see you tomorrow.